Berlin, January 1943. Snow drifts through broken window panes of the Reich Chancellery like ash from a dying fire, caught in the stale air as a young courier pushes through the heavy doors with breathless urgency. Inside, ministers and generals sit around a map-strewn table covered in red arrows, collapsing fronts, and shattered assumptions. The courier doesn't speak at first. He simply lays down a thick folder: photographs, intercepted reports, production charts stamped with American seals. No one moves. The silence stretches until one minister lifts a photo, squints at it, and mutters, "No, this cannot be genuine." Another whispers, "If it is, then nothing we plan matters." They had expected inflated Allied propaganda, not the truth staring back at them. Assembly lines stretching beyond the horizon. Rows of tanks longer than entire German divisions. Liberty ships launching in endless succession. A country untouched by war turning itself into a forge hotter than anything Europe had ever seen. To understand their fear, we must slip into the world they inhabited. Germany had built its rise on speed, on deception, momentum, and the illusion that it could seize half a continent faster than others could respond. Factories in Essen, Kiel, Munich, Hamburg strained under the weight of non-stop production. Workers labored until their hands split, repairing machinery worn almost to ruin. Every tank required sacrifices from other sectors. Every plane represented steel taken from somewhere else. Fuel shortages haunted every plan. Germany believed America would be slow, disorganized, indecisive, too distant, too divided, too comfortable to transform itself into a war machine. But the first signs of what was coming appeared not on the battlefield, but in Detroit. A directive went out. Stop making cars. Stop making refrigerators. Stop making anything that didn't fire, fly, or move armor. America froze its entire civilian industry and redirected it toward war at a pace no one alive had imagined possible. German intelligence analysts had expected modest production increases, perhaps more trucks, more rifles, a few thousand additional aircraft. Instead, they were staring at photos of a single American factory producing a B-24 bomber every 55 minutes. It broke every assumption German high command had built its strategy on. And the more they examined the data, the worse it became. Factories that once made typewriters were making machine guns. Sewing machine plants were building aircraft components. Automobile plants were turning out tanks, armored cars, and engines by the thousands. The sheer coordination stunned even American observers. Washington didn't have to lecture its citizens. The country simply pivoted overnight. Steel mills ran at full capacity with molten rivers glowing red through fog and smoke. Shipyards thundered day and night as thousands of welders stitched Liberty ships together like metal quilts. Entire cities joined the war effort, not metaphorically, but literally. Pittsburgh glowed orange from the furnaces. Los Angeles shook from the roar of aircraft plants. Chicago pulsed with electricity as new factories rose faster than German bombs could destroy their European counterparts. Meanwhile, in Germany, Albert Speer tried to soften the truth. He reassured Hitler that American output suffered from bottlenecks, that shipping delays would slow everything, that Allied morale would crack before Germany's industrial backbone did. But inside his private notebooks, found years after the war, his own handwriting betrayed him. The Americans are solving technical limits we believed unbreakable. Their capacity will grow faster than we can destroy it. He feared what the others refused to say aloud. Germany was facing not an army, but a civilization awakening with purpose. Across the ocean, Americans joined the effort with an energy Germany could not replicate. Workers volunteered for midnight shifts. Women left kitchens for welding stations. Teenagers staffed drill presses and riveting guns. Immigrant families, Polish, Italian, German, Irish, found themselves unified in a single cause. By 1943, the United States was on pace to produce more planes in 1 year than Germany had produced in the entire war up to that point. For tank production, the gap widened even faster. And when it came to trucks, the lifeblood of modern logistics, America didn't just pull ahead, it leapt into a different league entirely. Germany built a few thousand. America built hundreds of thousands. Armies don't collapse because they lose tanks. They collapse when they cannot move. German officers touring captured American supply ships were stunned by what they found. Spare engines stacked high like towers. Crates filled with identical replacement parts, something Germany almost never had. Ammunition reserves were so vast that a single cargo ship carried more shells than an entire German corps might see in a month. And these weren't elite shipments. They weren't special or unusual. They were routine. One officer wrote privately, "The Americans fight with abundance we cannot comprehend." He wasn't speaking of luxuries, though American troops had plenty, but of something deadlier, limitless replenishment. Germany fought with the desperation of a nation running out of time. America fought with the confidence of a nation building toward its peak. This imbalance terrified German leadership more than any battlefield loss. Battles could be won. Fronts could be stabilized. But industry was the skeleton of war. And Germany suddenly saw that its own skeleton had cracks while America's had none. What arrived on Germany's doorstep wasn't merely an opponent. It was inevitable. A country so vast, so unscarred, so aligned in purpose that defeating it was no longer a strategic challenge. It was a mathematical impossibility. When the meeting in Berlin finally adjourned, no one spoke loudly. No one dared. The folder remained on the table, open, its photographs lit dimly by the gray Berlin light. One general touched the edge of a chart almost reverently, as if it were not paper but a verdict. Germany had just witnessed the beginning of something it could never outbuild, never outrun, never outlast. Now word spreads through the corridors of German high command not by official briefings, but by whispers, quiet tones in hallways, worried glances exchanged behind closed doors. Something enormous is shifting across the ocean. Something Germany can't yet see with its eyes, but can already feel pressing against its ribs like an oncoming storm front. Reports arrive from agents in New York and Chicago, describing factories converting overnight, rail lines overflowing with raw materials, thousands of new workers showing up each morning as if summoned by instinct. A colonel in the economic ministry reads a report twice, then a third time, unable to believe it. America is producing trucks so quickly that some assembly lines roll new engines before the previous day's units have even cooled. The scale is incomprehensible. Germany's entire war effort rests on scarcity. Scarcity of fuel, scarcity of steel, scarcity of time. America is drowning in abundance. The first real shock comes not from the Atlantic, but from North Africa. German officers stationed in Tunisia send back reconnaissance photographs of American supply columns. Endless rows of olive-drab trucks stretching across the desert like a moving river. It is not the tanks or the artillery that terrify them. It's the rhythm. Every day, the line seems longer. Every day, larger crates appear. Every day, more vehicles crest the dunes, each identical to the last. A captured American mechanic explains in broken German how spare parts are shipped in bulk. Crates filled with dozens of the same component, thousands of bolts identical in threading, entire pallets of replacement engines. German officers stare in disbelief. Their own supply lines rely on improvised repairs, cannibalizing wrecks, and welding scrap into place. They operate in a world where every bolt matters. America operates in a world where bolts are infinite. And then comes the moment that German officers in Tunisia write about in their diaries, the moment that will echo through Berlin. After a fierce skirmish, German engineers inspect the wreckage of a burning American truck convoy. They expect to find disarray, patchwork equipment, mismatched ammunition. Instead, they discover crates meticulously organized, each labeled, each packed in foam, each interchangeable with any other vehicle in the formation. One officer, unable to hide his admiration, mutters, "This is not an army. This is a factory that moves." News of that remark travels faster than the official reports. It becomes a quiet confession repeated in staff meetings and mess halls. The Americans fight differently. They fight with the confidence of a nation that can replace everything it loses. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the effort accelerates. Factories run at such speed that managers sleep in their offices. Entire manufacturing districts glow at night like molten rivers of industry. The Pennsylvania steel mills pour enough metal each day to build new ships, new tanks, new locomotives. In Long Beach, the shipyards hammer together hulls under towering floodlights, with welders racing from deck to deck like sparks seeking oxygen. In Detroit, Ford's Willow Run plant expands so rapidly that workers joke it might reach the state line before the war is over. Every month, production surpasses the previous month. Every quarter breaks every previous record. America is not merely building for itself, it is building for every allied nation still fighting. Back in Germany, the gaps widened. Factories bombed in the Ruhr Valley lose irreplaceable machinery. Skilled laborers die at the front. Fuel shortages choke the Luftwaffe. The rail network frays under Allied bombing. And still the reports from America grow more unbelievable. A U.S. shipyard builds a Liberty ship in 4 days. A California plant constructs a bomber faster than Germany can repair the damage from one night of Allied raids. The German High Command begins to say the quiet part aloud. We cannot destroy their production faster than they expand it. A German general describes his alarm in a letter to his wife. I fear we have awakened a machine that was never meant for war, and now that it is awake, it will not rest. His words are not poetic. They are terrified. He senses what others haven't fully admitted. America's strength comes not from soldiers alone, but from the millions of unseen hands forging iron, riveting planes, stamping out parts, welding hulls, loading freight trains at midnight. German civilians begin to notice something strange as well. New rationing, more severe shortages, longer hours in factories. People line up for bread while American supermarket shelves, according to neutral observers, remain stocked. Rumors circulate about America's untouched cities, its wide highways, its rivers of coal and oil. A woman in Munich overhears 2 workers discussing it between hammer strikes. We are fighting a nation that lives like a giant. We had no idea how large it truly was. A sense of dread begins to creep into everyday life. Not dread of Allied armies. They have faced armies before. Dread of something deeper. An opponent whose potential has no visible ceiling. The turning point arrives in the form of intercepted communications. Germany's cryptographers break into a series of American logistical reports. Mundane at first glance, containing schedules, shipping manifests, inventory sheets. But the numbers inside them feel like science fiction. A single American port unloads more cargo in 1 week than Germany can move in a month. One Allied convoy carries more gasoline than Germany could extract from its dwindling reserves in an entire season. The sheer weight of Allied supplies becomes a metaphor among officers. We are being outbuilt, not outfought. One colonel, normally stoic, slams the papers onto the table and mutters, "This is the hammer that will fall on us." He doesn't mean tanks. He doesn't mean aircraft. He means the foundation beneath them, the endless metal, the endless fuel, the endless manpower. Germany has fought a war of daring and risk. America fights a war of gravity. And that gravity is increasing every day. By the end of winter, Berlin no longer sees American industry as a distant threat. It feels like a slow-rolling earthquake coming from across the Atlantic, one that cannot be stopped, only endured. Germany begins to understand that the enemy they mocked as disorganized, decadent, and soft has become the one force capable of crushing them without ever running out of strength. Spring 1943 unfolds with a sound Germany had never heard before. The steady, rhythmic thunder of American logistics rolling across continents and oceans. It begins with convoys, massive, almost mythic chains of ships stretching across the Atlantic. From U-boats lurking beneath the waves, German captains stare through periscopes in disbelief. The convoys no longer appear vulnerable or hesitant. They have become floating fortresses. Destroyers with radar that sees through fog. Escort carriers launching planes from decks that weren't there 6 months ago. Merchant ships are so numerous that sinking one feels like tossing a stone into a river. A U-boat commander writes in his diary, "For every ship we sink, 2 more appear. It is a tide we cannot turn back." As the Allies tighten their grip on the sea lanes, American equipment begins arriving in Britain at a pace the German High Command refuses at first to accept. Tanks unloaded in endless rows. Flatbed trucks carrying shells stacked like towers. Airfields expanded so rapidly that locals joke they could see the runways growing. Officers in Berlin scan reconnaissance photos of British harbors and see something terrifying. American material arriving faster than British crews can unload it. One general, stunned by the sheer density of supply depots, murmurs, "This is not supply, this is saturation." But the real shock comes when German intelligence intercepts production estimates for Operation Bolero, the massive American buildup in Britain. They expect thousands of troops. Instead, they see millions. They expect a fleet of transports. Instead, they see thousands of aircraft, thousands of tanks, countless vehicles. And behind that staggering front line stands something even more alarming: the promise that America can replace everything twice over if needed. A Luftwaffe officer examining the data whispers, "If this is true, then their war has only begun. Ours is already half over." Meanwhile, on the battlefield, German soldiers begin encountering something entirely new: American units that are not just well-armed, but oversupplied to the point of surreal abundance. A German sergeant in Tunisia describes capturing a small American outpost and finding crates of food, ammunition, spare uniforms, boots, medical kits, enough to outfit an entire company. "They live like kings," he says, almost in awe. "And they fight with the confidence of men who know they will never run out." His commander replies with a grim half-smile, "That is because they won't." Reports like this infest the German command structure like termites. Each one alone seems trivial. Together, they form a pattern that cannot be ignored. Panzer divisions that once advanced with brutal speed now halt for lack of fuel, while American armored units move like clockwork, never short on gasoline, never short on ammunition. German maintenance teams patch tanks with scavenged metal, while American depots discard damaged parts without a second thought, replacing them with factory-fresh components shipped across an ocean as if the ocean were a mere puddle. Then comes the moment that truly breaks German confidence. A reconnaissance plane photographs a British airfield lined with American bombers, so many that the wings nearly touch. Then another photo arrives. Another field, equally full. Then another. By the 10th, even the skeptics relent. America isn't sending a few planes. It is sending an air armada, a machine meant to erase entire cities if necessary. One German official utters a phrase that historians would later find scribbled on a margin of his report: "They intend to outbuild our future." Back in Berlin, the economic ministry tries to calculate what this means. They compare German steel output to American, German coal production to America, German oil stores to American possibilities. Every equation ends the same way: Germany cannot catch up. America has more factories, more space, more resources, more workers. And what America lacks, it buys or builds. While German factories struggle under Allied bombs, American factories operate in peace, untouched, growing stronger with every passing week. Ordinary German citizens begin sensing the shift as well. They notice the Luftwaffe flying less often. They notice ration lines growing longer. Factories that once buzzed with confident energy now echo with fatigue. Workers whisper that the Americans have factories where robots do the welding. Machines, not men. This isn't quite true, but the myth spreads because it feels true. How else can a nation across an ocean build so much, so fast, so effortlessly? Then, in the summer of 1943, German agents report a single detail that sends a chill through Berlin. American factories have begun producing more tanks in a month than Germany can produce in 3. One factory, in fact, matches the output of entire German regions. A stunned officer writes, "It is as if they manufacture war the way we manufacture cars, only they do it better." As American industry gears up for the coming invasion of Europe, Germany faces a nightmare inversion of its blitzkrieg philosophy. The Germans had once believed that speed wins wars, that boldness and surprise can topple larger nations before they can react. But America doesn't need speed. America has inertia. Once its industrial wheels start turning, stopping them becomes impossible. By late 1943, American output had become not merely a strategic advantage but a force of nature. One German general compares it to fighting a storm. You don't defeat a storm. You endure it until it passes, or you are destroyed. And Berlin begins to understand the truth. America's power is no longer a distant threat. It is a presence, a pressure, a weight settling over Europe. German troops sense it. Civilians sense it. The High Command senses it with growing dread. What they once mocked as disorganized enthusiasm has hardened into the most formidable industrial war machine in human history. But the worst revelation is still coming. Because soon, Germany will not only see America's power from a distance, they will experience it directly, up close, at a scale they never imagined possible. The revelation arrives not with a single moment, but with a cascade of shocks that ripple through the German high command like tremors before an earthquake. It begins with the bombing campaigns. Germany had prepared for British raids, slow, methodical, familiar. But nothing prepares them for what comes next. The arrival of hundreds upon hundreds of American bombers, filling the sky in formations so vast they cast shadows across entire valleys. German civilians look upward and feel something they had never felt before: insignificance. The sky belongs to someone else now. The Luftwaffe scrambles fighters, but every loss cripples them more deeply than the Americans, who send replacements before the smoke has even cleared. In briefing rooms beneath Berlin, generals study reports that seem almost unreal. American factories produce engines faster than Germany can replace pilots. American assembly lines build bombers faster than German crews can repair airfields. A colonel runs his hands through his hair as he reads the numbers aloud. They produce 3,000 aircraft in a month. We produce a few hundred fewer now. The room falls silent. No one looks up. They all know what it means. Germany is fighting a war against arithmetic. And losing. When American P-51 Mustangs begin escorting bombers deep into German territory, the effect is immediate and devastating. The Luftwaffe's last advantage, its ability to hammer bombers unprotected, disappears. German pilots who had once dominated the skies now face swarms of fighters flown by men with thousands of hours of training, backed by a nation with enough fuel to give every pilot more practice in a month than a German pilot receives in a year. A German ace, once celebrated, confesses to his mechanic before taking off, "It is like fighting yesterday's war against tomorrow's army." And yet, even as the skies shift, the real blow to German morale happens on the ground, when they begin capturing American vehicles. In Italy, a damaged U.S. Sherman is abandoned after a fierce firefight. German engineers swarm it with curiosity. They expect complexity. Instead, they find simplicity. Modular parts, standardized components, interchangeable pieces. Everything is designed for replacement, for speed, for production at unimaginable scale. A German mechanic laughs bitterly and says, "This tank is not built to live long. It is built to be reborn." And he's right. For every Sherman destroyed, American factories build 6 more. 6 more engines. 6 more turrets. 6 more hulls ready to ship overseas. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Hitler's advisors argue about how to stretch dwindling resources. They debate whether to focus on the Eastern Front, the Western Front, or the defense of the homeland. But no matter what they choose, the same problem haunts every conversation. Germany cannot build fast enough. Even the most advanced German weapons, the Panthers, the Tigers, the V2s, are produced in quantities too small, too slow, too fragile to shift the tide. They are masterpieces built in a world that now rewards mass production over engineering genius. A report from the Eastern Front illustrates the reality with painful clarity. A German officer describes how his division lost half its vehicles during a retreat, engines burnt out, tracks snapped, fuel tanks empty. They leave their crippled machines behind, torched to prevent capture. Days later, American supply convoys roll forward to meet their own troops, rivers of vehicles stretching beyond sight. The officer writes in his journal, "They advance as if their machines do not matter. For us, each machine is a miracle. For them, each is disposable." The contrast is enough to shake any belief in victory. Then comes the moment that spreads through Berlin like a whisper from the future. A captured American logistics officer explains that U.S. industry hasn't even reached full power yet. Much of America's industrial belt is still expanding, still refining, still accelerating. Factories running 3 shifts can add a 4th. Plants producing tanks can switch to aircraft. Assembly lines can multiply. America isn't fighting at its limit. It is fighting comfortably, with room to grow. The German officers who hear this react in different ways. Some scoff in denial. Some freeze in silence. Others feel a cold shiver of clarity. If true, Germany is not merely losing, it has already lost, and doesn't know it yet. A general in the Wehrmacht writes to his aide, We believed our strength came from discipline and will. The Americans built theirs from steel, coal, and time. We cannot defeat the horizon. The turning point approaches with the shadow of the inevitable, the invasion of Western Europe. Reconnaissance aircraft fly over British coastlines and return with photographs that terrify the German command structure. Beaches turned into supply depots, fields filled with tents, miles of newly constructed roads, and ports overflowing with American equipment waiting to cross the channel. It is not an army preparing to invade. It is a continent preparing to move. Hitler demands detailed assessments. He refuses to believe the scale. But when shown the raw photographs, thousands of vehicles, endless rows of landing craft, mountains of crates, he grows quiet, staring at the images for too long. The room is silent. No one breathes. For the first time, his inner circle wonders if he is beginning to grasp what they have feared for months. Germany is not facing an enemy of equal proportions. It is facing a tidal wave. And that tidal wave is seconds from reaching the shore. Because soon, Germany will not just see the weight of American industry photographically, statistically, or abstractly. They will feel it under their boots, hear it in the skies, and watch it grind across Europe with a momentum that no strategy, no division, no miracle weapon can slow. The first hint arrives before dawn, a low, rolling thunder that seems to vibrate through the earth itself. At first, German coastal units think it's weather, distant storms pounding across the channel. But then the vibrations grow steadier, deeper, almost mechanical. A watch officer steps out of a bunker and feels the tremor in his boots. He lifts his field glasses toward the horizon and freezes. The sea is moving. Not the tide. Not the waves. The sea itself seems to shift under the weight of something vast. Only when he focuses does the truth reveal itself. Shadows. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. A fleet so large it turns the water black. Dawn breaks, and the scale becomes unimaginable. Landing craft stretching to the horizon. Warships lined in layered ranks. Battleships firing in perfect mathematical rhythm. And woven among them, American vessels, sleek, standardized, mass-produced machines of war, each one a small piece of a much larger engine. Germany had prepared for an invasion. But nothing, not even the most pessimistic intelligence reports, foresaw this spectacle: a floating continent. A manufactured storm. On high cliffs above the beaches, German artillery officers shout coordinates and orders, struggling to regain control of their units. Their guns fire. Their shells scream toward the incoming armada. But the armada does not falter. Behind every landing craft destroyed, 3 more advanced. Behind every damaged ship, replacements steam forward. The officers keep firing, but something inside them shifts. They aren't fighting men anymore. They're fighting the sheer force of industrial momentum. As American troops storm the beaches, something else happens. Something that shakes German morale more intensely than any bombardment. It's the supply chain. The endless flow. Within hours, cranes swing over makeshift docks. Trucks roll down ramps. Bulldozers carve roads into the sand. Fuel barrels form pyramids. Boxes stacked 5 meters high rise like monuments along the shoreline. German observers wonder aloud how this is possible. How can an army sustain such a pour of equipment without pause? One German major watching from a distant ridge mutters, This is not war. This is a moving city." And he's right. Every hour, another wave arrives. Every hour, another phase of the invasion machine unfolds. Ammunition, fuel, food, spare parts, medical tents, radio trucks, everything flows seamlessly, as though choreographed by one mind. German reports describe it with a phrase repeated over and over: they do not run out. Meanwhile, deep inside Germany, the High Command receives fragmented updates, some exaggerated, others understated, none comforting. A courier bursts into a briefing hall in Berlin, still out of breath, and delivers the first consolidated report. American landings have succeeded on multiple beaches simultaneously. Not one main landing. 5. No single force. A convergence. To reinforce them. More divisions are already loading in England. Factories in Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, Pittsburgh are working around the clock. Every day the invasion continues, the Americans grow stronger, not weaker. They consume the battlefield and extend their reach. Within hours, the reality becomes too undeniable for even the most loyal officers to ignore. The German war machine, brilliantly engineered, intricately designed, terrifying in its precision, cannot keep pace with a nation that builds weapons the way it builds cars, tractors, refrigerators. Germany's excellence is overshadowed by America's abundance. Inside Hitler's bunker, the tension is suffocating. Advisors whisper about regrouping, relocating divisions, creating new defensive lines. But each suggestion collapses under the weight of one fact: they cannot plug holes faster than the Americans tear them open. Even if they hold one front, another collapses. Even if they strike at one beach, three continue expanding. A general finally says what no one dares to admit: we are not losing battles, we are losing time. Elsewhere, German civilians experience the truth from their windows. The skies over major cities darken as American bombers pass overhead in numbers so vast they seem alive, like a migrating species. Sirens wail. People sprint into shelters. But even inside the shelters, they can feel it: the pressure of that industrial storm, the roar of engines built by factories larger than entire German towns. After each bombardment, civilians climb out to rubble-strewn streets. They sweep glass. They gather debris. But every week, the bombings intensify. The message becomes unmistakable: American capacity is endless. German endurance is not. By late 1944, captured German soldiers began speaking more openly to Allied interrogators. Not proudly, not definitely, but with weary honesty. Many confessed the same realization: America isn't winning through strategy alone. It's winning through repetition, scale, and speed. A young Wehrmacht corporal captured near can says, "Your country builds new machines while ours counts the ones we have left." That is the difference. And as American forces push deeper into Europe, German logistical collapse accelerates. Fuel trains go missing. Depots are bombed. Replacement parts for tanks never arrive. Infantry divisions shrink month after month. Commanders send reports begging for supplies they know will never come. By contrast, American units receive shipments so frequently that crates pile higher than the trenches they fight from. Soldiers joke about getting fresh socks every few days while German soldiers march barefoot through mud. Then comes the moment that seals the psychological defeat. In early 1945, footage circulated among German troops: grainy images of American factory floors. Conveyor belts, endless rows of workers, cranes swinging above assembly lines that never seem to pause. An officer watching the footage murmurs, "No general can defeat that." He's not talking about soldiers. He's talking about civilization. About the power of a continent-spanning production network Germany can never hope to match. And when the final collapse begins, when the Ruhr falls, when bridges blow behind retreating German forces, when Berlin echoes with artillery, the truth is no longer hidden, argued, or doubted. The German nation has learned, in the hardest possible way, what American power truly means. It isn't just military might. It isn't just technology. It's the fusion of industry, geography, democracy, and time. A storm that had been gathering long before the first shot was fired. Germany had imagined an American giant. But what they saw, up close on their beaches, in their skies, across their ruined cities, was far beyond any imagination.